In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few. It's this idea that as a beginner, we come to something very clear, without expectation, without baggage. It's a very open way of being.
Welcome, friends, to the Reiki Women Podcast, an exploration into the profound depths of the system of Reiki from a Japanese spiritual perspective and how that relates to our modern lives.
We are keeping it real to Reiki's origins, challenging the New Age stereotype that things like crystals, chakras, and angels are authentic aspects of the system. I'm Bronwen Logan, and when I'm not writing best-selling books about the Japanese system of Reiki, 75,000 readers and counting, I'm here debunking outmoded Reiki myths and coaching individuals and groups through my website, Reiki with Bronwen.
And I'm Michaela Daystar, lead teacher and weaver of Heartscapes Reiki, connecting the dots between Reiki and environmental and social justice, because our individual healing cannot be extracted from healing relationship with the collective and with the land.
And I'm Carrie Varela from the Reiki Healing Society, here to help you transform your Reiki practice into a thriving, prosperous business. Because while passion fuels your purpose, it's time to make it sustainable, authentic, and beautifully you. We're three women diving into the heart of Japanese Reiki. We're building a community that centers women's voices and inspires well-being. We're not just for women, we're for everybody. Come join the conversation.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to Reiki Women Podcast. Today, Bronwen and I want to have a conversation about something that is often bantered about. It's the sort of phrase that you hear over and over again, but we want to unpack it a bit. We want to dig into it a bit and see where we feel and what we think about the idea of a beginner's mind. What does it mean? How does it benefit us to take on this mindset? And of course, what does it have to do with the system of Reiki? So that is what we are going to chat about today, Bronwen. And I know you wanted to ground us in with a resource that anybody who's interested in this topic might want to pick up, and that can help us frame this conversation.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
I think the phrase has become well known through a book that was written years ago by Shunryu Suzuki, who's a Zen teacher. And the book is called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Mm-hmm. It was quite popular. I think the concept has always been a Buddhist or a Zen concept, but I can see that it transfers beautifully into the system of Reiki. What the benefits of having this concept of a beginner's mind is for a Reiki practitioner, I think is really interesting and something I'd really like to chat about with you. There is a quote from the book, and I wrote it down. It's, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few." Right? So it's this idea that as a beginner, we come to something very clear, without expectation, without baggage. So it's a very open way of being. Yeah. And when I was thinking about this, I was realizing that it's the space of the Reiki precepts. And we always say, don't we, that the Reiki precepts are what we are working toward in our practice in the system of Reiki. If we are without baggage, so we're without anger, without worry, we're not holding on to these things. And we are humble, so we're not being the expert, yeah. And we are honest, so we're not creating stories out of anything, of making things up. Those stories can be things like, oh, every time I do this, I fail. Or every time I do this, I'm fantastic. Whatever the story is, there are no stories if we're honest and we're just here in the moment. So for today only. And we're kind to ourselves. It gives us that space to be open. And for me, that's representative of the Reiki precepts, all those things. And when we're in that space, there's no disconnection, no, how would you say that? No boundaries between us and whatever this thing is. I actually wrote an article about it a number of years ago, and I think I called it something like Beginner's Luck. Oh, that's right. Beginner's Luck and the System of Reiki. So that's a blog on my website. And it talks
Nice.
about this idea. I use the example of shooting an arrow. I'm sure I've read it somewhere as well. This idea that the very first time that you shoot an arrow towards a target, and beginner's luck, you hit the center of the target. How's that possible? And if we pull that apart, we can see that it's possible because of those things that I've just mentioned, so that we're not holding on. We don't have expectations. We're not emotionally involved. There's no story. We're clear. And that allows us just to have that beautiful, pure focus. So have you had beginner's luck before, Michaela?
I love the metaphor that you just used and the quote that you read. I actually just, for the first time in my life, a few days ago, shot a bow and arrow. And I have fancied myself in my imagination like elven warrior, the master of the bow and arrow my entire life. Okay. I have owned two bows and a quiver of arrows and all of the accessories for years and have never shot them. And to be perfectly honest, it was probably because of fear, probably because of that feeling, that absolute certainty that I would be bad at it when I start, and it takes time to develop skill and difficulty, and I would need somebody to show me, and I would do it badly, and then I would be embarrassed. And a friend of mine just was like, hey, you want to come over and shoot your bow? Like, I just set up a target in the backyard, and I was like, is that legal? He's like, let's go. So it's not. Don't do that. And so here I am, haven't done it before, have studied it a bunch, have imagined it a bunch, have wanted to do it a bunch, have never done it. My third and fourth shots were bullseyes.
Ooh.
Now, I hit the fence at least a dozen times. Okay.
Yeah.
So like was bad at it to a certain extent. But it was interesting what happened in the light of this conversation. Because like when I first hit those two bullseyes, two in a row, I joked like, oh, well, I am now an elven warrior princess. Like I have arrived, here we are. And then I hit the fence 3 more times in a row, right? And so that idea of the beginner versus the expert, right? The duality of that was kind of in this joke. And then like, I hit the fence. I'm back to being a beginner, right? It was like all of the fears of I'm going to do it badly and I'm going to be embarrassed and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is just fun. I'm just doing it. It was cool to hit a bullseye. It's fun to do it this other way. It was just fine. So that's ironic you use that
I think
example.
fun is a big part of it. It's like a lightness, isn't it? And
Exactly.
fun is not attached to failure
right.
or expectation. Yeah.
And it's also fun is also not often associated with the stereotype of the expert, right? Once you are an expert, then you're beyond all of that. You're bigger than that. Your fun is for babies. And I just, I'm really compelled by that comparison in that quote, and then bringing it back to concepts that we work with regularly in Reiki. And obviously the Just for Today and the Precepts really invites us back into beginner's mind, invites us to recognize that we're always starting again. And it feels so connected to just being aware and embodying the reality of constant change, that things, including ourselves, are always changing. And either growing or deconstructing or starting again, that like nature is this cyclical reinventing itself, recreating itself at all times, right? And not just like start to finish, start again, but at all times there is some form of beginning happening again if we look at the world and if we look at ourselves. But our human mind and the way that our mind tries to kind of handle all of the complexities of being so aware of so much of the world, one of the things that we do is that honestly, to conserve energy and to be able to kind of stay focused and to rest, we kind of put our experiences into these buckets that seem to be unchanging. We go through a period of change and growth, and then we settle, and then we perceive that our life is kind of more or less unchanging for a while. And then when change happens and things new come, there's this disruption, and it can be quite unsettling. It can be quite devastating when change comes again, even if the change is good. Right? Even if it's, oh, I'm feeling so compelled to go back to college and do that thing that I abandoned long ago. A good thing, but that can also bring quite a bit of stress. And one of the things that I've worked with for a long time for myself and with clients is like change perception, like being able to perceive that we are in fact always changing, and therefore we're always beginning again. Connected to that is a concept that I was introduced to in terms of the system of Reiki through you primarily years ago, which is that idea of having an initial experience of ourselves and of the world. And the idea of the Reiju as an initiation rather than an attunement. And that what we're doing, and when we kind of return to that ritual, and when we return to Reiki, and when we return to the precepts, and we say, just for today, I anger not, it is a beginning again. It is having an initial experience, a first experience, a beginning experience with who and what I am right now, which is different than who and what I was yesterday. And that concept is so powerful. It's one of those that can seem like semantics, like what's the difference? But it's not. It's change awareness, that we are in fact returning to things that feel familiar from a slightly different perspective every time. And so beginner's mind helps us to make that more conscious and to bring that into our perspective in ways that have benefits. And I'd love to talk a little bit about what those benefits are. Why does it matter that we bring that perspective in? And what are the characteristics of a beginner's mind, right? We already talked about play and fun, lightheartedness, wonder. What are some other characteristics you would associate with a beginner's mind?
I was thinking about sports people. I guess it comes in with the arrow thing, but I was thinking about sports people. So if you look at sports people who are at the very top of their field, say it's a runner, yeah, and they're working so hard to get to a place. And what is that place? Where is it that they're going to? The actual place where they want to get to is that place of that initial experience, that beginner's mind. But to actually get through to that space, to make it something that they can just go into, then they need to learn a whole bunch of techniques and practices, and they need to learn things that will bring them into that and give them that ability. But when they get to that space, they have to let go into that space. So that's when they can let go and not hold on to, oh no, I have to do it this way. Or if they're thinking all those things, they can't actually be in that space. So it's the same as a meditator or a Reiki practitioner. Yeah. So we have all these practices, and they are there to take us to this space. And it's to actually teach us to let go. But we can't just go, oh, I'm going to let go right now. Whew, I let go. I'm there. Because I'm not there. And I'm here with you, and we're talking, and all these things are going on in my head, and I need to let go. So I think it's learning that skill through whatever field it is that you're in, that you can get yourself to the point that you can let go and to achieve whatever it is that it is that you're doing. So it could be sport or it could be whatever. But then being so confident in your body, in your mind, and just in every way embodying this thing, and just being able to know it and to let go into it. So I think those could be some characteristics of what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you read that quote again?
Yeah. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. So we have this openness to things, yes. In the experts, there are few.
Yeah. So it's interesting because that quote suggests that a beginner's mind is something that is quite different from, maybe even opposite from an expert's mind. But it's not the case that a beginner's mind and expertise have to be completely dualistic to each other. But the challenge is in the natural constriction of our mindset when we gain expertise. And I think that's what you're alluding to with the with the idea of an athlete needing to let go and kind of let the wisdom of their body and let their training and all of that kind of take over without being so constricted. Because one of the characteristics, like if you look up the summary of that book and the characteristics that got distilled, certainly openness, playfulness, excitement, but also a lack of preconceptions. And it's preconceptions that is the providence of the expert, right? Because we have gained expertise by experiencing a thing over and over and over and over again, and narrowing down our work with it, and narrowing down how we work with it, because we've learned what works and what doesn't work. And so we're going to do this and not this. So this is no longer a possibility. We're only going to do this because we've decided this is better for whatever reason. And so that process of refining our skill at something, anything, right? Anything about which one might have expertise, from brushing your teeth to neurosurgery, right? Anything we might have expertise in, that process of gaining expertise like almost necessarily narrows our sense of possibility, because it narrows our preconceptions. And, or no, I said that wrong. It establishes preconceptions. Yes, we have more of them. We have preconceived what is going to be good and what is bad, and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And so there's an interesting invitation here. If we can see that having a beginner's mind gives us more flexibility, more access to joy, more access to excitement and playfulness, more access to possibility, it allows us to be in touch with the reality of the world, which is that everything is always changing, always and forever. That includes us. And that we're also always growing or deconstructing, growing again until we die. And then we're physically deconstructed. And then we start again. Ooh, I got excited and bumped my computer. So if we accept that those are good things, right? That those are valuable qualities to have, and we have these teachings like Just for Today, and like having an initial experience with life, with ourself, our true self, with our connection to spirit or whatever it is, then it's not a matter of rejecting expertise. It's a matter of bringing a beginner's mind into the things about which we are expert in. And I'm curious about that. And I'm kind of thinking through examples. Where has that been true, and how can we make that more conscious?
Yeah, I mean, I see someone who says that they are an expert as someone who has limited their options, right? And I think that's what it's saying. And that there's someone who's like, this is the only way it will work, because this is what I say. But if that is the case, I think that expert is not there yet, because that expert hasn't got to the point of being able to let go of these restrictions. Yeah. So it's like we begin with beginner's mind, and then we move through into the expert mind, and then we can move through again into the beginner's mind.
Right. I love that.
Yeah. So because we don't need to hold those limitations any longer. So for me, that concept of letting go is incredibly important, and being in the flow.
Right.
But I have a good Reiki little analogy here. So to this little quote. So when we call ourselves Reiki masters,
I was thinking the same thing.
it's like saying, I am an expert, right? But as we know, we never know. And that is the most beautiful experience of practicing Reiki, because being in Reiki and just allowing whatever needs to happen, it takes a lot of skill to be able to allow that to happen, because we're going, oh no, I need to do this. Shouldn't I have to do this? Oh, I want them to be, I really want my client to feel this. And we're doing all these things. So we have to learn practices that teach us that's not necessary, and that we can let go of all of that. And we can be in the flow. And us being in the flow is then allowing anything and everyone in our circle of awareness to feel that and be in that with us.
Yeah. This is one of those places that paying attention to the language we use, I think, really matters. And it's something I pay attention to a lot. It's just kind of how I'm wired and come from a family of writers and professors. So like the written word and the spoken word are something that I may be overly aware of. I think that the value of that is that we often we have patterns of speech that are subconscious. They're just kind of how we learn to talk. And so we don't necessarily interrogate and really think about, well, what does that actually mean? And this is one of those. So it's like the difference between saying I am a master, I'm a Reiki master, versus I am one who works towards mastery of this practice, or I am an expert versus I have expertise in Reiki, the system of Reiki. And the like those two in contrast to each other, expert versus expertise, right? I am one with expertise. The one feels much more constricted and finite. It feels like a destination. Like I went to school, I did my preliminary work, I moved through the systems, I've done it for 20 years, and I am now an expert. Done. End of the road. Right. Possibilities closed down. I have arrived, right? I'm done changing. I'm done growing. Now, obviously, that's not exactly reflective of reality. I mean, most experts will continue to keep updated on things that are new in their field and so on. But semantically and in how we can sometimes internalize that, there is this sense of finality, of like, this is an arrival place. Same with master. Versus I have expertise. Expertise is not finite. Expertise is not a destination. Expertise is an experience. It's an ongoing experience. And so that's one of those places where that shift in language can help us to keep our mindset focused on staying open in the way and letting go in the way that you're describing. And I think about the way in which the English language is so much more finite and so much more structured and narrow in its construction, which makes it very good for giving directions and explaining things and making logical arguments and such, being very clear about what we mean and what we don't mean. It's not very good at adding layers of meaning into something, revealing subtlety, revealing various ways in which a thing can be interpreted and having that be normalized. And so I think I'm curious now, like what the kanji of the word expert and expertise might reveal about the way in which those concepts are thought of. What other concepts are embedded in that collection of kanji that would make up those words? I'm just thinking of, there's a particular kanji that means a critical juncture at which change becomes possible. Little kanji means a critical juncture at which change becomes possible. And that kanji is part of both the word crisis and the word opportunity. All right, so that idea, that concept of a critical juncture where change becomes possible is part of both crisis and opportunity. And I love that because both of those experiences have this opening in them, right? And it shows you connection between crisis and opportunity, that inside of every crisis, there is opportunity. And inside of every opportunity, there's the potential for a crisis. And so I don't know, I'm on a tangent right now, but I'm curious what the kanji of those words, beginner, expert, expertise might show
Interesting.
us.
Just talking about kanji, we also have in Reiki something in the word Reiki, in the kanji of that. We also have something which is sort of similar to what you were just talking about. In the kanji for ki, which is, shows the rice being cooked in the bowl and the steam coming off. The rice is this sort of like asterisk-y sort of kanji. There is a stroke added to that, which is transformation. So it's the transforming by practicing, it's the transforming of the physical, if you like, the rice, the foundation into energy. Yeah. So by practicing.
Yeah.
So.
Transformation, change, initial experience, beginner's mind, I feel like they're all really connected and in ways that are worth thinking about.
Yeah. And I think it is saying that you actually need to do the work to get to help you be a beginner's mind.
I think that's such an important and compassionate thing to remind us, because that is a journey, right? Like when we're little, we're beginners. We have a beginner's mind naturally because that's where we're at in our life. And then we do effort and we want to get expertise and we want to get good at things. And so we learn the rules and we learn a method and we learn to follow that method, and we'll have varying degrees of interest and willingness and compulsion to follow the rules or not follow the rules, break the rules, right? There's a spectrum of how adherent to rules a person is. I tend to be just over the midway point into loosey-goosey with the rules is where I tend to fall. But either way, when I think about my Reiki journey, there's a period of that, my experience as a practitioner, let's call it the first 3 or 4 years, where I was very rigid in how I was applying those rules. I really wanted to get it right. I wanted to do it right. I wanted to be seen as getting it right, as having expertise. And to be honest, I wanted to be a Reiki master, right? And so I needed to be a master. And I've talked in other conversations here about the impact of that as making me fairly rigid and how I applied those methods and techniques and interpreted them. And that at a certain point, I learned to let that go. I shifted, I took on a more expansive view of what Reiki is. I learned about its origins, etc. And am now in a much, much more fluid place. And my tendency sometimes is to have some condemnation for that past self, that rigid practitioner who was so silly that has to be interpreted like this and it has to be done like this, right? But what you're reminding us is that that's part of the process. Like we go through these periods of rigidity and we go through these periods of constriction, and that it is an evolution to come back to beginner's mind, that we come back to it. I'm sure there's people who have retained it more consistently throughout their life, but I think that, as you're saying, it's more common that we return to it, and that it's almost a sign of a certain type of expertise to be able to kind of come back to that and to be able to experience the value of it. I just had a Reiki session the other day with a good friend, and she was going through a really difficult, traumatic experience. And in the session, we had the whole conversation about, you never know what's going to come up in a session. You might have things that feel difficult. We'll respond to them if they do. And within 2 minutes of the session, she was on the floor screaming, was the level of things that were coming up. And while that was an extreme version of the variation that can happen in a session, and I didn't exactly know what to do. I don't exactly have a protocol. There isn't and here's what you do if your client ends up screaming on the floor, right? Here's the rule, right? But what I did have was expertise. And I had confidence, and I had trust in myself and in her process, and it was beautiful. Yeah. We were just in a kind of intuit and respond. Oh, this wants to happen. Cool. Let's respond. Okay, I'm going to actually just sit back and be in my breath right now while she does the work, because she's obviously doing what she's supposed to be doing. And that scenario would have completely wrecked me in those first 3 years. I might have given up Reiki if I had had that experience. It would have been very, very challenging. And yeah, so being grateful for being able to take a beginner's mind in that moment and say, I don't know exactly what to do, but I know that we're going to be okay. And I know that my presence here matters, and I know that we've got this. And we did.
Yeah. So. It's almost like not saying that you don't know what to do. It is what you said. It's that sitting back into all that work that you've done that allows whatever needs to happen, and for you to be in whatever way is going to work in that situation. And because of your experience, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I guess maybe it would be more accurate to say, not that I didn't know what to do, but what I knew to do, what the right thing to do was to sit back, to let it go, to observe, to be present, to release control of what was happening, but to pay close attention and to be present and to be responsive. So it's like I knew what to do, but what to do wasn't a this and this and this and this.
Exactly. And, that's going to be different every time too, because of who that person is and what's happening with them.
So what is one thing that you would advise yourself and others as a way to encourage yourself or others to stay or to get back into a beginner's mind? Is there a practice, or like how would you get back into a beginner's mind if you felt that rigidity of expertise or of fear coming?
Maybe going back to something that you said early on, and that is remembering the fun of something because of that lightness. Because when we're really rigid, our mind is rigid then too. Yeah. So we want to release that in some way, and finding the joy, that fun, and allowing that to bubble up and be a bit more playful and see what comes out of that, if that can help you to loosen up a little bit. But I think that gaining that expertise is going to allow you to go into that space. So maybe gaining the expertise. Don't jump into it too quick. Don't go, I'm a Reiki master. I just did 3 days of training and here I am. World.
Yeah,
Don't
give me
do
that
that too
client who's screaming on the floor. That's what I want to do. Yeah. So I think play is such an important point of beginning. I think about I'm doing a session at the Reiki Business Summit. Y'all should attend, on how to run a really good online class. And I put out to the group that's running the summit what questions folks had. Like, here's the topic. I know what I want to talk about. What are you most curious about? And universally, the questions were logistical questions about the tech. And a lot of it is like, I'm terrified to share my screen because I don't know what they're going to see, and they're going to see all my tabs, and that's going to be embarrassing, or I'll share the wrong thing, or whatever, whatever. Or I'm afraid of Zoom bombers and I don't know what to do about that. And so I don't ever do a Zoom thing, or whatever, things like that. And
the tease.
right. And the idea, and it's like, I'm like, in my mind, my question was, have you tried those things in a neutral setting where there's not a class and you haven't sold tickets to a thing that people are showing up for you to be the expert at? Have you just jumped on Zoom with some friends and just played with it? What happens when I share my screen this way? What do you see? What happens when I do this? What do you see? Did you get sent into a breakout room or not? Like, have you played at all? And the answer was no. No, I'm afraid of it. I don't know how to do it. I'm not an expert in it. And therefore, I'm not going to create these online classes that I really, really want to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the answer is play.
Yeah.
Let yourself be bad at it, and let people who can just be there with you and
That's
don't
something
have
we
an
haven't.
investment in you being an expert.
Yeah, that's something that we actually haven't mentioned, which is that it's okay to make a mistake. And I think that that's a big thing of this expert thing of being like this, and mistakes help us learn, and mistakes give us possibilities. I always say I'm so much more creative when I have a problem. Like if I'm making art or something like that, if there is something that I don't have, or cooking even, if I don't have an ingredient, well, I think of something else, possibilities. But if I go, no, this is what it is and this is how it works, well, then I can't cook because I don't have the ingredients. But instead, I could try something different, and maybe I make something really amazing and interesting, maybe not.
Or maybe you make
But
something
I'm
absolutely
open to
terrible, but the chickens will eat it. They don't care.
it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think about another strategy is like noticing where we're attached to a particular outcome. I'm dealing with some challenging household stuff, and one of the things that was making it challenging and that I'm working on, and it's really helping, is I became aware that I was really attached to a particular outcome. This is what I want to happen, which means this is what should happen, which this means this is what's gonna happen, and we're gonna contort everything and narrow everything down so that that's what happens. Instead of saying, is that the right thing to happen? Is that actually the best solution? Am I missing something? If this happened, would it be awful or would it be okay? Is there possibility here that I'm not seeing? Of course, the answer is yes. And I'm in such a better mindset about it because I've been, well, I have a preferred outcome. I'm not attached to it. If a different thing has to be done, it's not horrible. It's just a different thing that we have to do.
And that works because you're not coming from a place of fear
Right.
that whatever it is that you wanted to happen isn't going to happen, which is working with the precepts, right? So it's working on yourself to allow yourself to actually be free enough to think like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Gotta do the work, people. Gotta do the work.
Okay, well, that was fun.
It was fun. It was indeed. Well, friends, tell us your experiences with beginner's mind. Is it something you struggle with? Is this something that you've thought about at all? Do you find yourself easefully, allowing yourself to consider multiple options? How do you respond to play? Is that something that feels that you can step into easily, or do you struggle with it? We would love to know. And if you have methods, tips for folks bringing a beginner's mind into their life, please do share them down in the comments. We love to see what you think about these topics. So thanks, Bronwen, for this great conversation.
See you later, Michaela.
We love ya.
In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the experts, there are few. It's this idea that as a beginner, we come to something very clear, without expectation, without baggage. It's a very open way of being.